The OPT progression for the lats begins with the static ball stretch. With palm face down, the athlete presses their chest towards the floor, keeping the back as flat as possible. This is repeated on both sides, holding the stretch for 30 seconds. Progressing to the active isolated portion of this program is the active ball stretch. The athlete is positioned exactly the same as the static ball stretch, but this time the athlete presses their chest towards the floor for 3 to 5 seconds before coming up and repeating that same motion 10 to 12 times on each side. The PVC pass-through is used as the functional stretch for both the lats and the pectoral muscles. Using a wide grip, the athlete brings the shoulder through its full range of motion by passing the bar overhead without bending the elbows. The pectoral stretch progression begins with the static box L stretch. The athlete assumes the tabletop position on hands and knees, placing one arm 90 degrees with forearm on the box. The athlete then gently presses their chest towards the floor, holding for 30 seconds on each side. The athlete must be careful not to put too much pressure on the bicep muscle or tendon. Moving on to the next progression, the athlete completes the active box L stretch in the same way the static stretch was completed. This time, the athlete moves in and out of pressing their chest towards the floor, holding the position for only 3 to 5 seconds, and repeating this on both sides for 10 to 12 reps. Moving on to the lower body, the progression for hip flexor begins with the kneeling hip flexor stretch. Lunging one foot forward, the athlete brings the front leg at 90 degrees and tucking the tailbone under to create a posterior tilt of the pelvis. Raising the arm overhead increases the stretch. Each side should be held for 30 seconds. The next progression is the active kneeling hip flexor stretch with movement. Once again, the setup is the same as the static stretch, but this time the athlete moves in and out of the posterior tilt, holding the stretch for 3 to 5 seconds and repeating that 10 to 12 times on each side. While in the lunge position, the athlete should be aware of tucking their tailbone and not overarching their back, which could create an anterior tilt of the pelvis. Walking lunge and twist will bring the entire hip joint through its full range of motion. The athlete lunges forward, tucking the tailbone, and doing a gentle twist from side to side before standing up and lunging forward with the opposite leg. The standing forward fold is the first progression for our hamstring stretch. In this static stretch, the athlete gently falls forward with knees slightly bent and arms hanging. The athlete's back should remain as flat as possible without overarching the back. The banded hamstring stretch begins laying flat on the ground. The athlete secures the band around one leg, gently bringing the leg straight up into the air and with a slight bend in the knee. With the opposite leg pressed into the floor, the athlete gently pulls back as far as they can their leg towards their head. This stretch is held for 3 to 5 seconds before releasing the band. This is repeated 10 to 12 times on both sides. During this active isolated stretch, the athlete should be careful not to overextend the knee or pull on the hamstring too much and cause irritation. Finally, the dynamic stretch leg swings will bring the hip through its full range of motion. The athlete begins parallel to the wall, swinging each leg 10 to 12 times freely, forward and back. The athlete will then face the wall, gently swinging each leg 10 to 12 times from side to side.